called Jan Oosthuizen, Paul Oosthuizen.
No.
He's a guy that's the CEO of a company called Ilongi Retail. I've known him for many, many years, and he has just taken over the role of CEO of a retail outlet, a retail sort of company in a hardware company in the northeastern Transvaal. And they're just in the process of joining Sapma right now. He's taken it over CEO, and he's going to be conducting quite a lot of training on our training programs. I'm going to ask him, I suggested to Tara that we actually invite him onto the committee, which I think he'll be a tremendously valuable asset. And then also, I've spoken to Jaco Hutton, who has just been appointed as the CEO of Manco. And I've discussed this with him from a point of view of him joining it. And I think he makes a very good potential chairman of that committee, because I think Nick has obviously got too many things on his plate and is not really, contributing quite a lot.
So yeah, he did mention last year that he wanted to actually withdraw from the committee.
Yeah. So can I just then say this? Derek, I'm going to be so brave as to say this. Please give me the authority as a subcommittee to convene a retail chamber to the extent that we can get the retailers together. We can get them to make a decision as to whether or not they think it's necessary to have an input into the bargaining council, specifically the FMCG chamber at the bargaining council, before the bargaining council finalizes their next agreement, because this is my concern. And I know I'm speaking outside of your agenda. Please forgive me for this, and I'm happy if you want to, Derek, to bring it back into the agenda. But my concern is this, that they are about to initiate this next agreement. They will get the agreement finalized by the end of August. There's no question about that, because there'll be a gap between the end of July that they have to fill pretty quickly. And then what's going to happen, we know it because Gerrie has told us, is they're going to apply to the minister to extend that agreement to all non-parties. And non-parties in the fast-moving consumer goods chamber are your retail members. Your retail members are those non-parties, which means that if the non-parties don't have a say into what that agreement is, and remember, they are headed for a 3-year agreement now, which means that for the next 3 years, the minimum average salaries will have been negotiated and agreed to for a 3-year period that your members will not have had a say in, and conditions of employment as well. And that concerns me, because they're taking in every single company's plant-based agreement now into their general conditions of employment. So it's not even going to be that it's pervasive across the sector, or rather, it's not going to be that it's within a particular company, a Shaves or a Midas or whatever. Now it's going to be generalized for all the retailers in the country. And so if we do nothing now and they have that agreement extended, your members are stuffed in terms of conditions of employment and wages for the next 3 years.
All right. I obviously understand exactly what you're getting at. I think after this meeting, what I will make arrangements is, I think that there are 3 or 4 big players that we can get hold of, and their executives, one of them being Builder, the other Micah. Obviously, I'll speak to Nick as well, because he plays a reasonably important part in that. And then we'll obviously bring in people like Paul Oosthuizen as well. And we'll start with them, because I think they make up most of the numbers.
Okay.
Those are the basic sort of members that we've got access to. There are a couple of small ones, and I'll speak to Dulux as far as their outlets are concerned, because they have a number of outlets that they have access to. So I think after this meeting, give me some time, and I'll set it up, Ivor, and then we can actually talk directly to them.
All right, fantastic. And because, Derek, I'm consciously aware of the fact that I'm crashing your meeting. I apologize for that. I'm just convening it.
No, not at all.
Not at all. I think your input is always valuable.
All right. Okay, thanks. And we'll chat about the DTI story, where they want a proposal from us as to a specific charter for paint. They want that proposal from us, so we'll have to work towards that. But we can chat about that later. All right.
Guys, I've given my telephone to my wife in case that there was any sort of interruption. I think it's a chance of you phoning Tara and just finding out if she's okay.
Of course, I can do that. I'll go offline and I'll do that quickly for you. Please carry.
Thanks very, very much.
Derek, it is recording, so this meeting will be recorded, and I'll send you the recording afterwards. I'll go offline now and I'll find out where Tori is.
Thanks very much. As I said, I did speak to her earlier this morning. Right. Anything that before you comes that you guys would like to raise as far as the notes are concerned, and we can just preempt that? I'm just a little worried. If I can sort of talk about something that I'm a little worried about, is that lead-in paint thing. I think we have a situation here whereby the Department of Health is trying to bully us into doing things that are going to cost this industry a hell of a lot. Now, it's not going to affect the bigger companies too much, although they're going to have to change a lot of labeling, and it's going to take over a period of time. But, you know, with affidavits and all this type of thing, I mean, it's absolutely bloody ludicrous that we go through, and you saw the notes that Bobby wrote, and he's come back and said that, you know, we should go for it, and say to them that they should give us the guidance and not to, you know, really command the center stage on this one. After this meeting, I'm prepared to write to the Department of Health saying that we are not in agreement with the draft regulations, and that we will oppose the situation as per it. And if you see my notes there, I said what we aren't prepared to do and what we are prepared to do. And I think we should just, I haven't sent it to them yet. I wanted to pass it from this meeting first to find out exactly what your feelings were. How do you feel? I mean, Stephen, as a manufacturer as well, what are your feelings about it?
Stephen's gone silent.
Stephen, I can't hear you. Sorry, Steve, can't hear.
Guys, can I just say well, Stephen can hear us, but we can't hear him. His microphone is on mute. So I'm not quite certain what's going on there.
Sorry, there is back. Sorry.
Oh, there is.
Apologies.
No, that's fine. And Tora is online, Derek. Tora is online, so she can hear us. We just can't see her.
How are you this morning? Tora, let them hear your melodious, croaking voice.
Hi, Tora.
Derek, she can't, for some reason, she can't speak. I think there's a problem. You might have a firewall at your office, but she can hear us, she says, and she can see us.
Okay. All right then. All right, let's start from the beginning, and we can revisit that just now, Stephen. But let's just go through it. I think matters arising. The Surface Coatings Employees Association. I've said that we've received a written report by Jan Smith, which was really in the most nebulous bloody style that Jan Smith does. But Ibe is writing a different perspective as a result of the information that we've got from Kerry Besaidner, who's been absolutely outstanding on this one. He's completed that, and we're going to be sending that out in the next day or two. But I think we should be, as I said in that, he mentioned in that, I think that the industry should be negotiating for no increases instead of bloody making redundancies go on, which is the normal way that these things happen. But be that as it may, it may not. All right. There was quite a lot of action in the technical committee, which I'd like to go through. We held that on the 31st of April, and there was a little bit of report in the AGM, if you remember. There are a few points that I'd like to bring up. That there was the proposal of a compulsory specification for road marking paint with the national regulator of compulsory specifications. This was a suggestion that was made by the SABS, and I think it's an exceptionally good one to bring the standard of road marking paint up.
Yes.
There was a situation whereby the certification of SAN 73, there should be specific procedures for companies that have got approval for their road marking paint, and then those that are actually applying from. So that the SABS are going to be giving us feedback on. It was also agreed at the last technical meeting that we should adopt the Green Building Council's version of the VOC standards based on the European standard. I forwarded all the members the GBSA that limits excess and the BCF guide to VOC emissions for coatings. and what is the process of formalize. We're now looking at what the process is to formalize the SABOC standard, which is in the hands of the SABS. The other point that was spent a lot of time was on the global harmonized system of GHS, which everybody is actually starting. And if you have been watching the notes, Kaya, of which we are a member, have been actually running training programs as far as the GHS process is concerned. But I think it's something for those companies that have not started the process need to do it quite quickly. Obviously there are new labels for the GHS diamond and not the old EU orange square. So I think we should obviously look at that one very carefully. As far as methanol is concerned, there's nothing new to report, except we're still waiting for the Department of Health to clear the process as far as the CS report, which they've been sitting on for 2 years. And I have a serious feeling that this is as a result of Sasol blocking it. That's just a personal opinion. Titanium dioxide, the temporary import rebate. I got a report from XA International that ITEC was verification at the Kansai last Thursday. The next step now is for the Commission to decide whether to initiate an investigation or not. However, I believe an investigation will be initiated likely in July. Now, the reason for that, I think, is that the new plant of the Nyanzi is apparently starting up, and although they feel, according to XA, neutral about the matter, this will have to be confirmed later once they have started with their responses. For these timelines, assuming that the initiation happens in July, we will likely see a final outcome at the year end or early next year. But these days decisions on these matters are taking a little bit longer than usual, despite the fact that our president last night said that it's going to be streamlined and everything is going to work faster and better and all the bloody rest of it. I don't know if you listened to that bloody fairy tale last night, but I'm not feeling exactly the most optimistic in the world at the moment. As far as titanium is concerned, the BCF media statement regarding the titanium dioxide in Europe was sent out. REACH is still trying to ban titanium, and the industry is successfully blocking the ban. I think it's basically on the fact that they are trying to do it on the carcinogenic properties of titanium in the manufacturing process, and particularly the dust. I think we have a situation whereby I think what will be conceded is the fact that there will have to be some extra health and safety regulations at the point of manufacture. And I think that's something that most of the paint manufacturers are going to have to look in. The bigger companies are obviously able to sort of go for a mechanized basis, but it could be a little bit of a problem as far as the smaller companies are concerned. But I will watch that very carefully and keep everybody involved.
Derek, that's not as far as I understand, that's only applicable to the actual manufacture of titanium, not manufacture of the titanium product into paint.
No, it is. It's unfortunately is that, Stephen. That's why the paint industry are in such up in arms about it, because they've claimed that, I mean, one of the arguments, of course, is that there is no carcinogenic transfer once the product is made. It is not a carcinogen that is dangerous in the paint itself. But they're pointing out that the danger is to the workers and to the manufacturing staff who are producing the paint and are inhaling this into their lungs.
Okay.
Now, they've tried all sorts of things by saying you could use zinc dioxide, you can use everything. The industry has tried everything. And of course, you're never going to get the whiteness. Now, it's far-reaching because, as you all know, it's used in paints, it's used in making toothpaste, it's used in paper, it's used in everything. So it's huge implications. And I think not only has Europe, or CETA as it's known, CETA or CEPI, but the American The paint industry is coming to it, and so is the Australian and the British, of course, and we have given tacit sort of support on that one as well.
Okay.
What are the Germans saying, Derek? The Germans and the North European guys.
Well, that's the SEPI. That is the European Painters Association. So all of Europe is in that one. It's just purely the bloody Frenchmen and this REACH thing, as far as you know, they would like to see everything completely benign. And if there's anything, I remember when I was in the oil industry, they were trying to get rid of all sort of cutting fluids and anything with that chlorine in them. Anything that's beyond water was doubtful as far as they're concerned. So it's a pretty onerous sort of organization, but I think according to BCF, and I've had a discussion with Tom about this, he said they feel that they've got it in control and there is no ways that these guys are doing now. They've thwarted it twice by going to the final meetings, and it's been withdrawn from the agenda at the last moment because they realize they're not going to win it.
Yeah,
okay.
I remember Tom actually at the last meeting actually brought up the whole subject when he was here for the Coatings for Africa show. Yeah,
that's right. Well, nothing's really changed on that one, except that they have got more support now from the Americas, obviously from Britain and Europe, and then also Australia has come to the fore as well. I mean, they just don't see an industry without, or a paint industry without titanium, Stephen.
I can't see. Sorry, I just don't know how that's going to happen.
Well, you know, they're trying to come up with all alternatives and diatomaceous earth and talcum and all the rest of it. But so maybe we're not going to have a white world anymore. I don't know. Anyway, reduction of lead. Sorry, guys, I've written a tremendous bloody amount there because I wanted to give you the details of it. But in effect, I mean, we are being bullied by the Department of Health. And as far as the labeling is concerned, Bobby has very, very effectively written a definition as far as the paint is concerned, and which paints obviously would use pigments, and he's actually defined it purely as solvent based and said that there are no pigments in water based, and as a result of that, there's no water based products or any decorative paints that need to be relabeled. Now, I don't have to tell you what the cost implications are of changing the labeling of every retail or every decorative paint in the marketplace and every pack. I think you all have your own sums.
Yeah.
They want everything done. We are saying we are prepared to, as an industry, do that on solvent-based enamels as well as industrial paints, and I think that can be handled quite easily, and that's the stand we've made. Then they're saying that every company has got to sign an affidavit. Every CEO has got to sign an affidavit that their product does not contain lead, and it's a once-off, and anybody can be obviously prosecuted as a result of them finding lead. We're not prepared to succeed to that because it's the only industry in the country that has to sign an affidavit about a law that has been passed. So we're against that as well. And also, what are they going to do about imported products? So they're going to get the importer to sign it. So that's the other point. The third point is the laboratories and the test sequences. They have conceded that they are not, now they've done quite a lot of research apparently. The SABS have told them that they're not prepared or not in the position to do all the testing as far as lead's concerned, and the independent laboratories have done the same. The argument is, well, it's because nobody's checking for lead, but when we do check for lead, they will get themselves up. But anyway, they've conceded that they don't have to be independent as accredited laboratories to do it. And I think we will concede the job that's saying that as long as the tests are done according to one of the SANS requirements, there are 2 or 3 tests that can be done, and as long as lead tests in the factories are done to that and a sample is kept, I think we can get away with that. So what I've said to them is that this is what we are prepared to do. This is what the note that I sent you out yesterday or the day before. This is what we're not prepared to do, but this is what we are prepared to do. And if you look, I copied the Indian legislation on that one, or the gazetted on that, and that's really the way to do it. It's a one-page bloody outfit and says this is what you do, and they'll carry it on. So if you guys are in agreement with that, then I am going to write to them tomorrow or Monday and say we are against the regulations, the draft regulations, and we are going to oppose it.
I agree.
Derek, can I come in here just with a suggestion at this stage, and that is that for them to take note of what it is you want to say to them, the first thing I've got is a question to you. How are you polling your members on their response to these various discussions? What are your members getting as information, number one? And number two, and this is what government will always ask you, what mandate do you have to provide this kind of input? And so my question to you is there a wider committee beyond Manco? Do you require members of a particular level to participate in that community, to give you input on these proposals and your counter proposals? How does that communication process take place?
All right, well, there's two ways of answering that one. First of all, Bobby Bagbanini, who is the chairman of our technical committee. This has been extensively discussed with our technical committee, whose members make up probably 10 of the biggest companies in the country. So their technical directors are all part of that technical committee, and the agreement has come out of that. Bobby Bagwandine is sitting on the technical working group of the Lead in Paint committee, and has mouthed these shall I say, problems and concerns about these proposals on numerous occasions. But all we get back is that, yes, this is something that you may not agree, but the Department of Health wants it. What has come up here really, Ivor, is the World Health Organization has put forward suggestions as to what should be included in the draft regulations. Now, for 10 years of absolutely being in the complete wilderness as far as the Department of Health is concerned in lead, now one of the members of the South African Department of Health sits on the World Health Organization's committee, and obviously this is where the influence is coming. So what they're trying to do is to put all the suggestions by the World Health Organization into the requirements so that they can pat themselves on the back. This is not happening around the world, and it's just going to cause a tremendous amount of cost for the industry. So that's as far as we've gone. I mean, to have a complete, I mean, I've mentioned it at the AGM, it's reported at the AGM. If what you're suggesting, Ivor, that we put out a letter and say if anybody disagrees, they should let us know.
So Derek, I don't have any suggestion except to say that it is an opportunity, I suppose, to rally the companies around the consequence of them not reacting, or the consequence of them facing legislation. For example, exactly as Stephen has said, imagine a scenario which has to be titanium free, for example, or you know, any of these things. Imagine the impact should that any of this legislation go through. Now, if that is strong enough to rally your manufacturing members around, then I suggest that from an association point of view, it is an opportunity. And I don't know how you would use the opportunity, except maybe to have a criteria for who you would require from each company to participate in some kind of a forum to be that last line of resistance, if I can put it that way. From an association point of view, it's less about the content than it is about the strategy.
I must admit, my views are concur with yours, and I've been thinking of the technical. You know, the technical committee would obviously support that, and would be the committee which would have a fair amount of standing by virtue of the fact that it's got 10 of probably the most qualified chemists or paint chemists in the country. But I think your view is a very good one, and if the Manco are happy with that, I will put out a draft letter to all members saying that this is what we are going to do, and if anybody is in disagreement, they should let us know.
Maybe what could be very useful is for us to find someone, an economist, who is in a position to write a business case for us, looking at each of these things. So looking at methanol, titanium, and lead, looking at each of them, and the VOC standards as well.
Brilliant.
And saying, right, the consequence of this for small, medium, and large-sized companies, if this legislation goes through, is as follows. The strategy to either moderate these standards or counter these standards needs to be as follows. And to put that to your members and say, right, guys, please read this stuff. It's idiot-proof, so anybody should understand it. And we need a mandate from you. Either you want us to challenge or you are happy for this to happen and go ahead. Because then you push the obligation onto your members and they can't turn around at a later stage and say the association did nothing.
I personally think that's a very good point.
First of all, let me just refocus this thing. It's not as if we are saying we do not want to comply with the reduction of lead in paint. We are 100% in agreement with that. In fact, we've been promoting it for the last 10 years. So that's not what the argument is about. The argument is about, obviously, the chief executives of each company signing an affidavit. I don't believe that it's necessary. The second and probably the more vital point is the fact that if we have to relabel every can of paint, that is going to be very, very costly. And I mean, we're talking about, I know, if Stephen just looks in, just does it in his head and sees how many products they got, how many packs they've got, and what it would mean as far as the cost concern. I've already spoken to Palepack, who says that the plastic labeling system that they've got stock for about 8 or 9 months, valued at about 10 million rand. So it's a huge problem, and it's not necessary. Now, the bigger companies will probably have an update of their packaging on a more regular basis because of throughput and sales. The smaller company is not able to have the same problem. So they have got stock that's going to last for a long time and plate for a long, long time, and it's going to be very costly for them to do it. Now, there is a caveat on all of this that the negotiations was that this should not in any way impair business and lose staff or lose, people should go bankrupt or not be able to do this. And this is something that I think is being overlooked. The other point is that they are not covering their boats as far as imported product is concerned, because nothing is going to happen to the imported product. And with us opening our borders to Africa and no tariffs are going to be charged, I have very serious doubts as to whether there will be the checking of lead in the paint when it comes into the country.
So, Derek, what I would recommend then is potentially to talk to the department and say to the department, exactly as you've said, it's cost ridiculous. It's totally prohibitive at this moment in time. It wasn't a requirement when we prepared the tins and we prepared the labels, etc. So this is an unfair practice as far as we're concerned. But what we can do is implement, if you want, a product verification system, which then says that Sapma can produce, if you want, a wall poster for the branch that says all of these products are certified by Sapma to fall within the reduction of lead requirement and therefore a reduction of lead product, which then says they don't have to label their products as much as simply have a poster on the wall in line of sight of the customer, and potentially also on their invoices make a statement in that regard. And in that way, assist your members not to have to comply with the relabeling requirement, at least for a period of time, but to be accountable because they would have point of sale kind of references in store.
I agree with you, Ivor, and I think that's something that we can put forward. But there has, we put these things forward, and all we do is get a reply back from them saying that yes, Sapma, they acknowledge the fact that Sapma is not in agreement with the WHO recommendations, but the DOH have the right to do it.
No, I'm not suggesting you counter the recommendations. I'm suggesting we say that this, at least for the next 3 years, this is an operational mechanism to help the department actually achieve its objectives, where what we're doing is, if you want, we're working with a store-based certification system as opposed to a tin-by-tin product-based relabeling system. So we're making it happen for the department, but at the same time, we're saving our members the money of having to print up new labels.
Well, we've got a long way from that. You know, we've gone down that road already, because the original request was that the tins had to be printed with the manufacturer's name as well as the distributor that it was going to. Now, you know, we've come a long way in reducing a fair amount of it, from a point of view that now we've just really got to the fact that every pack has got to have a statement saying that this product has less than 90 parts per million of lead. We've already acknowledged the fact that the packs have got, obviously, instructions as far as the use of the product is concerned. It has got the date of manufacture, and it's got a batch number, and for those companies that are ISO 9001, a sample is kept for a period of time according to the ISO managerial sort of system. But they are adamant that every pack of paint has got to be relabeled. Now, this is a tremendously costly exercise, which I think is futile in the future.
They'll put a lot of the small companies out of business by implementing those laws.
Derek, if you can remember some time back when lead was quite a big issue in that, and then what we did is everybody got onto the bandwagon and they put that lead-free on top of the lid or on the pack. So that was something they did then. We're in a fortunate position. We're reviewing all our packs and a lot of our larger customers' packs. So we've already got onto the 90 parts per million, and so that's an advantage for us now. But I like the proposal that Ivor's made for in-store. I think that's a post that everybody can see, and then we handle the packs as the time comes to change them.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, I think we will negotiate a time period, and I think we negotiated successfully a 2-year period before packs would be changed. We even recommended, as you did in Promac, and a number of companies did, they used, in the interim period, they used stick-on stickers saying lead-free, etc. Those are not acceptable. They won't accept those. So it's a situation whereby, it's a bullying tactic as far as I'm concerned, and I really think that, and Bobby has got to the stage where we go to a meeting and we find exactly the same thing every time, and it's on the agenda for the next time. It's almost as who's going to give up first. I think the suggestion that Ivor has made as far as the retail poster is concerned is a new idea. It's a new thought, and I think that's a good idea, something that we'll do. And obviously after this, through the recording, I will make notes and put that to all our members as well, and we'll make that recommendation.
I think what we've got to look at is something that's more long term, because we've been changing our packaging over the months, over the years. And we've been including all these things, and then all of a sudden some new idea comes about, and then we've got to change there as well. So we've got to look at something more permanent, not something that's going to change in a year's time or 2 years' time. Some of the guys can change quicker because they use up their labeling quicker, but some of the smaller guys take them a year or two or maybe even 3 years to finish off their labels.
Aggie, I agree with you. I think the situation here is that you must appreciate that we negotiated lead in paint, and I was at the original meeting when I was still with Promac, and I was chairman of Sapma, with the Department of Health in 2003. Stephen, you may remember that way back then, where we came up with that. That law was only promulgated in 2009. Now, from 2009 until date, not one person has been prosecuted for using more than that, and there have been many tests run by the Medical Research Council highlighting some of the high levels of lead in paint, and yet nobody has been prosecuted as far as that's concerned. Because first of all, they do not have the means to test the paint. Secondly, they do not have the staff to test the paint. And I believe that what they're doing is they're trying to wrap this up legally as binding as they possibly can, to put the onus on the manufacturer and to alleviate themselves of the responsibility of actually policing the issue. That's my view.
I agree with you there.
I don't know. As I say, I think I was, and I will relook at this, and I will put forward the idea of us coming up with a poster, and I will include, I'm trying to do it from a point of view of what we are opposing, but what we are prepared to do. And that is another thing that we can do that Ivor suggested, and I think it's a very good one. Thanks, Ivor.
So Derek, just in that regard, before you move on, what I was suggesting is this, that we actually sit down with the department and we say this to them, that we are proposing to you that we put in every single retail outlet that is a member of Sapma, and hopefully you, the department, might see it useful as saying all retail outlets that sell paint have to be a member of Sapma to be able to make this happen. But we will ensure that by December of 2020, every single retail outlet has to be accredited by Sapma, has to be graded by Sapma as a lead-free or a lead-controlled environment for its paint product, where it lists in those point-of-sale posters the products which have been certified as lead-free or lead-reduced. Because that way, then the manufacturers and the distributors don't have to label every tin, but instead that will be listed in store, and it will be listed, which should be sufficient for the department at least for the next 3 to 5 years, while the manufacturers and the distributors are getting their tins and their labeling in order. I'm not saying they'll accept that, but I'm saying if we begin the negotiations with the department about that, it does this. It positions Sapma at the head of the game, number one, and makes Sapma accountable for how the retailers are playing the game in this regard. It reduces the onus on the retailers themselves to have to immediately start the relabeling process and incur the expenses you're talking about. It also buys those retailers a 3 to a 5 year period, depending on how long the department are prepared to give us. It buys them that period to adjust their labeling, to get their house in order, and to have a relationship with Sapma, which says it's a grading relationship with Sapma that buys them the goodwill with the department. And all I'm suggesting is it's actually good for everybody if we commence with those negotiations.
Well, first of all, it's not the retailer that's got to do the labeling, it's the manufacturer. So we're going to have to look at that one carefully. I think the argument, I've used that argument as far as Sapma membership is concerned, but they're obviously worried about the members, the non-members, and how they get together. What we do have is in place, and we have had it in place for some time, is an indemnity form that the retailers can sign, which makes the manufacturers sign that there is no lead in paint. And I think we can play on a theme from that as well. I think the idea of them saying you have to be a member of Sapma is marvelous from our perspective, but I'm not sure whether it's something that some of the people will agree to. But I think the concept is a good one. I think we can actually look at it and attack it from that point of view, and I think it gives us something to go back with in a positive way, because I don't want to appear to be negative all the time.
The other problem is the paints that have got lead in it. Some of the industrial companies that are manufacturing industrial paints that have got lead in their paint. We're going to have to address that, and how do we address that?
Well, that's going to be that's going to be in the legislation. The legislation will come out and say that all paints, regardless of what the make is, whether it's a retail, whether it's an industrial product or an enamel, it has got to have no lead in it, or 90% or 90 parts per million lead. So they're going to have to comply as far as that's concerned. You must remember that although it's not uncommon, most industrial paint is not sold through the retail sector. Yeah. It's sold directly. There are some companies, and I'm sure the ProMac have the same thing, where some industrial products are in smaller packs and may be sold. Usually there is a sector, and I'm talking about, sorry, Alka's more than anything else as far as enamel is concerned. But I think we can overcome that one. I think the suggestion is a good one. Let me write something up and I'll pass it to you, Ivor. If you'd have a look at it, I'd appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
All right, can we move on?
I agree with that. Yeah, let's move on.
All right, government departments, the guidelines on import and export permit requirements for the Department of Agriculture is ongoing. These have been sent out to the members. It was also agreed with Kaya that we will monitor all moves as far as DAF is concerned. If there are any changes, I send them out immediately. The DTI, we've had no further contact with them apart from the meeting that Ivor and I had with them as far as the chamber was concerned. We had a meeting on the 29th of April to discuss the coatings industry charter with the DTI, and they're sympathetic to our request, as we've said, and asked us to develop the case, and that's what we were talking about before the meeting. So we were busy doing that one. As far as the health is concerned, our primary problem there is the lead technical working group, as we've just debated. Labour, nothing to report on that one. ITEC, we don't have anything to report except for the application of duty-free increase on acrylic resins, which has not yet been resolved. You might remember this was as a result of our friend Kevin Lurie complaining as far as the import and the blockage of the import application from Taiwan. That is something that both reef and synthetic polymers are obviously asking for protection against, because the product, if you remember, Kevin said that the product was not as good as that from Taiwan, and both the companies have proved that the local content product is far superior. The big argument, the fact is obviously the price, and that is what they're asking protection for. But I'll keep you informed on that one. As far as the MCCM, the multi-party on chemicals, the DOH did report the lead in paint as presented at the committee, and I forwarded to all the members whereby they say and they register that Sapma is opposing some of the ideas. Moving on, stats scheme.
Derek, sorry, can I come in before you move on to number 5? I'm not certain if this fits into your government department report back, but just in terms of labour, at the end of May, 31st of May, the new BBBE criteria for scorecard criteria were promulgated by Labour, which have quite a big impact, particularly around things like management control, skills development, and procurement, etc. And I suppose it's a question to you. Does that fit into this report or not? Or in fact, is it a report which only should have to do with paint?
No, absolutely. I think this fits in 100%. You guys agree?
Yep.
So
I think it's something that obviously, if it makes any changes to the BBE scenario, I think we should obviously bring it into the report. I will in future do that. And is there any way that we can actually have access to that so I can send it out to everybody?
So I will get. It's actually a 4-part government gazette that's been produced. But what I've done, Derek, and I'm quite happy to do it, is to convene a webinar for your members on understanding the changes to BBBE and how it will affect their businesses. I'm happy to run that as a 1-hour webinar if you want, along the same lines as we're now meeting. You just need to come back and tell me, and then I'm happy to schedule it with Tara.
You know, my problem with this one is I think it's a great idea. It's getting the members to actually participate. They far prefer to stick their bloody heads in the ground like an ostrich and wait until it hits them.
You know, there's some severe and significant ramifications.
Let's put out the offer, because there are some companies, and I think mostly not only multinationals. Multinationals are really in a major problem as far as this is concerned, as far as ownership is concerned. But even a private company like yourself, Stephen, like Promac, I mean, obviously BBE is of major concern to you as well.
No, it certainly is.
So, Ivor, can I ask you to do that? Let's get something together.
All right, I'll work with Tara on that.
Okay, fine.
And just sorry, one other thing. The Department of Education has now also become responsible for science and technology. And my recommendation again, Derek, is to try and get close to them, particularly from a research point of view, to try and get close to the Department of Science and Technology, both for Sapiti and for Sapma to play a role.
I think that's an excellent idea, and we'll get Michael onto that one immediately. I'm going to be reporting on some of these contacts that he's done with UJ, which are coming to fruition, but we'll talk about that a little later. Right. The stats team, we've got 14 companies who agreed to participate, and hopefully, their numbers are being sent to BOC. I will follow it up at the end of next week just to find out who has not sent any figures in yet. I know that some of the members have sent in, and I'll just chivvy them up, but we've got to start in some way. Getting on just purely from an information point of view, IPEC have changed their names from the International Paint and Printing Ink Council to the World Coatings Council. They'll be sending a press kit to us for the official launch of this, which we will publicize the name in South Africa as well. Going on to public relations and marketing, Jan continues to provide us with an excellent coverage as well as our members, and I don't know if anybody saw the Sunday Times this weekend when our own Tara Ben was lauded and featured as far as her working career is concerned, which I think has done a tremendous amount of good for not only the industry, but I think for women in management. And well done, Tara. We're very proud of you.
Yeah, well done, Tara.
Thank you, Tara.
Right. Coatings for Africa. No further comment or contact has been made with DMG apart from the odd note from Ian saying that he's well. They've sent us an extra 2,000 Rand odd, which they found that they had shortchanged us as a result of the last show. So it was greatly appreciated. And then you do know that DMG actually sponsored the shirts at the Sapma Golf Day. We're very grateful for that. And I think for the first time, we had a situation where most people wore the shirts that were actually given because there was no conflicting advertising on it. So it's something that I know Tara has taken a note of, and we will make sure that the shirts will be probably indiscriminate in future. Medical Research Council are investigating. This is something that's come up again as a result of the lead technical working group. They're investigating the levels of lead in ceramic dishes. They wanted to arrange a meeting between the retailers who were importing the dishes into South Africa and Sapma, because they wanted us to take a responsibility for the lead pigments that were being used in glazes. I had asked whether anyone was aware of any of the lead of glazes in the ceramics, but after discussion with the technical committee, I've advised them that Sapma has no affiliation or contact with glaze producers, and we're not going to get involved in it. The majority of local manufacturers, to what I can gather, are not using leaded glazes, although I understand that the major manufacturer in this country has been banned from exporting into America for that reason. But the majority, 80% of plates, shall I say, crockery, are imported by retailers into this country. And it's certainly something that I do not believe that we should be involved in. Right, in new membership, retail, the Duma Hardware and Bricks, that's the one that I was telling you about, Paul Oosthuizen. He's got 15 branches, and he's going to be a new retail member. And contractors, we've got Transforce International, Asympetic Trading, KGBW Pty Limited, and Benchmark Holdings are all contractors. And then we've got a new retailer, Digital Paints, that have begun. Our numbers then resulting in membership are obviously manufacturing up to 117, associated at 67, retail will be 16, and the contractors have gone up to 23. Any comments on that?
Nope.
No.
That's good. Training matters. And I'm sorry that Tara can't actually join in here because this is her baby, but we'll go through. The Education Committee, first Education Committee was held on the 15th of April under the chairmanship of Megan. It was quite a lovely affair because there weren't too many people involved, but we will be creating a new Education Committee. And there are a number of people that we will bring onto this. I would like to record our deepest sympathy goes to John Reed and his family on the passing of John. We have prepared obituaries for him in the SA Coatings magazine and General Coatings magazine. It was one of those unfortunate issues that Tara had spoken to him on the Tuesday, and he was saying that he had a little bit of a cold, which obviously spread to his chest, and he died on the next day, and we were unfortunately only notified almost a week later. We obviously tremendously sad about his passing. When you consider that he was a man who spent 60 years in the paint industry and was our chief tutor from 2000, he played a tremendously important role in the development of Sapma and its training courses. And I think he'll be sorely missed. I think a tremendous amount of people in this country passed through his hands and mentorship. We also record the passing of Leon Fonda, who, if you remember, we used him initially quite a lot when we were getting our programs accredited by Cheetah in 2010, 11, and 12. And unfortunately, Leon died after a very long illness, suffering from cancer. So we're pretty sorry about that. I think the good news is that we've received notice from Cheetah, and I think this is something that we're all very pleased about, is the fact that we've been awarded grants to the value of about 400,000 Rand odd. There's a list of the projects that we have been awarded, which I've given you, but it certainly is the first time we've got it. I think Sapma Sapiti has enjoyed a tremendously good month, according to Tara, and I'm sorry she can't tell you herself, in the training inquiries and applications, and training has been booked for not only the 60 odd people that we are going to be training, or as far as the Cheetah grants are concerned, the Mansfield paints have been approved, NAFN Trading and Development, Universal has been approved, module-based, there's another 5 that are on self-funding on pigments and dispersions has been approved for July and August, and government funding for manufacturing and paint technology, the 4-year program. We've got 35 youth in Mpumalanga manufacturing and paint technology, and that's been approved. So we've started off with a very, very good start well, I wouldn't say the new year, but I think it's finally starting to come in. I'm sorry, I wanted to ask Tara what the advent of the retail training is concerned, because there certainly is a certain amount of interest in that, and that Laduma is certainly starting immediately with that. I think the other point is that Tara made a note of that we've confirmed 20 candidates from Dulux to begin in July for the professional sales training program, and we've also got a commitment from Plascon that they will be sending quite a big contingent on the sales training course as well. So that all goes very, very well for the Sapiti figures, and I'm very, very pleased to report that. The promotion of the polymer diploma as per Mandela University, following the success at Mandela University, the polymer diploma course has been running now for almost 20 years, and we are trying to bring it to the similar sort of a similar course to the Gauteng-based university. Michael has been working with the University of Johannesburg, and he's actually at a meeting this morning to sign an MOU with them because they're very keen on making it part of their postgraduate course. So I think we'll watch this one very, very carefully, and thank you, Michael, for pursuing this one. And as I say, he's attending a UJ board today for the signing of the MOU with Sapma. On the construction CETA, we've received an email from CETA saying the Learning Pathway and Quality Development Unit acknowledges the receipt of your organization's application for the NQF accreditation on the construction CETA. Desktop analysis will be conducted within 30 working days, and should your organization be compliant, a site visit will be scheduled. The findings of the audit will determine if your organization meets the requirements, which we do, and we've already, Michael has already attended the desktop evaluation meeting with CETA on the 14th of June, which went well. In line with the proposed painter skills program, we're seeking accreditation from CETA for the painter skills training, where there's 28 and 18 credits respectively. The first one is application, the second is preparation. We are accredited and await the certificate. So we have been accredited for those, it's just a formality. Any comments on that one?
No.
Right. The interview with Grant Buchler, I sent you as detailed report as I possibly could, which wasn't too bad because I asked Buchler to check it against the original recording, and he said that I had captured the essence of it. I'm not going to go through it, except that our friend Mr. McClutler acknowledges the fact that he was out of court, in that he did get accreditation, he did get an application, or he did get a grant whilst he was employed, and he did promote his business to some of our members whilst in our employ. When asked by Buchler if he was aware that he had signed a document that said he couldn't do that, he said he felt he was quite justified in doing it as a result of the treatment that he had received from Mandy Lenossi, and that he had reported it to me and I had done nothing about it. I remember the case, significantly, because it was right after one of his appraisals, in which I think Mandy did step out of court and say that he had the intelligence of a child, and this was what he was upset about. And I did actually, during an appraisal discussion with Mandy, castigate her for using the language and for the connotation of it. I did say to Buchler that all of this information was housed in a reasonably well-documented appraisal system which had been introduced, and if he wanted access to that, he could actually see that. In synopsis, he had an interview with McClutler, who, as I said, agreed to all of this, and stated that he would very much like to get together with me to discuss the situation and to appease the situation, because he felt that he could help Sapiti a lot and that we could help him. I pointed out in no unfashionable manner that we considered him to be dishonest and that we were not prepared to enter into any negotiations with him on anything, never mind this. I then got a sort of a feeling that Gobodo was sort of making the main issue the Maclala accreditation or the Maclala sort of problem, whereas I brought it back to perspective from a point of view of saying that the major issue as far as Sapma is concerned is the unethical way in which Peter had handled the accreditation and the granting of grants whilst they knew that he was employed as far as Sapma was concerned. Now, Gobodo or Buchler stated that he could not find anything from an ethical point of view written down saying that they were not allowed to do that. I then sent him a lecture on bloody ethics, and And then he came, and then I sent them a copy of the ethical behavior report that we have to sign on Cheetah's behalf, as far as they don't call it ethical, they call it, I can't think of the name of it at the moment, but it's about a 15-page report. It's a conflict report that we had to sign as Sapma to be in cultural Cheetah, which in essence is talking about unethical behavior. So I've submitted that, and we'll see what happens as far as that's concerned. Then he came back to me last week and said that there was a report as far as Cheetah was concerned on the handling of our accreditation of the manufacturing qualification, or shall I say accreditation, and terms that it took us 2 years and not the 5 that I had mentioned. But I must admit, in the notes that I had actually made, I was talking about the technology one. But be that it is made, that has been confirmed. He told me that, and I must admit, I've been very impressed with the way Gabota have handled this. And Buchler told me that he was going to be delivering the final report either today or Monday to the Cheetah. But it's going to be very interesting to see whether this ethical thing comes up. Obviously, I'm not going to anticipate it, but I think they're going to try and argue that they were well within their rights to appoint Matlala, even though he was employed with us. But I think it gives us an ethical countering with. Any comments on that, gentlemen?
No.
No, sounds like all under control.
As I say, it's a lengthy thank you. But the other thing that was rather interesting, he said to me after the recording had been turned off, he said to me, are you going to take legal actions against Matlala? And I said, well, at this particular stage, not, but that could change. He said to me, bearing in mind you could have a problem because there was a spelling or a typo in your employment agreement. And the agreement says, whilst, and I quote, whilst employed by the company, you shall not be engaged or take part, directly or indirectly, whether as an employee or any other capacity, in any other business, with the company's prior written consent, and the word with should be without. So we've obviously made the changes to the contract immediately. I'm not sure. I think he made a point as a legal man saying the reference should be changed, but he thought that although readers would understand the meaning of the statement, there would be a legal implication if further action could be jeopardized, and further action could be jeopardized. I think one of the things, what I've been to bring this up again, is the fact that my question as to the assessors and the moderators for Matlata, he stated that he had got independent assessors and moderators, although he refused to name them. And we know that there are not too many in our industry. So I have asked for the names of the assessors and the moderators that he has referred to. The other point was, how did he get by not having premises and a training center? This, in his evidence, was quite remarkable. He said, the system is very lax and I took advantage of it and I used Dura paint. And I asked them whether I could have permission to use their premises as my own for training, which he stated Leon Reeves had agreed to. Now, the Cheetah documentation maintains that there has to be a signed lease and an MOU entered into before this can be agreed to, and neither of these were done. But Gabota then went and interviewed Reeves, and Reeves said that he could not remember the situation completely, but he remembered that it was done in my company with Matlala, and it was at a time that we were specifically looking for training venues, and Dura said that they are quite happy with Sapma making the training center available to Sapma. And Reeves said that that's what he believed he meant, and it wasn't specifically for McLaughlin. But McLaughlin had actually said that he had taken advantage of the lacks of cheaters' requirements, but they have tightened it up quite considerably now. So I'm a little upset about that one. I think the important part of any final report has got to be based on whether they have answered the accreditation process relating on whether it was ethical, regular, and was there any undue influence and favoritism. I think that's got to be answered. In relation to the representation of cheetah chamber, was due process followed by cheetah in allowing representation in McLaughlin on the cheetah chamber structures, which was for coatings? Was the grants evaluation and allocation compromised so as to favor McLaughlin at the expense of the first entity, which is Sapma? Was the omission of Sapma or Sapiti on the SACWA database deliberate or malicious? Sorry, not malicious, malicious. And he asked me specifically on what I thought. Buchler said who I thought had changed it. So I said that I am 100% sure that it wasn't done by SACWA, because the CEO of Sapma had written to me saying that they were unable to make those changes and alterations and that they had to be conducted by the cheetah. When we confronted the cheetah on that, or shall I say they confronted the cheetah, he said it had been inadvertently done and that the person that was responsible for it was on leave. My comment was that it was a long leave because it took 6 months. I also want to know whether he was fast-tracked with the knowledge that he was acting in conflict with his employee, and that I understand. I have tabled that to the commission by virtue of the fact that CD stated at a board meeting that he was fast-tracked, and yet in writing they repudiated that. So I think that's really the part that we're going to be looking at. All right, any comments on that, gentlemen?
No, I think you handled it quite well, Derek.
Thanks, Aggie. I will try and improve it to very well, but quite well is good enough. Thanks very much.
I mean, well.
Okay. Financial report. I met with Graham Buck regarding the bookkeeping services. We'll finalize the costing services, and we're providing training for both Tara and Komatsu to fulfill the role of providing information accounts to save Buck's time. I must admit, Aggie, this is something that I think we're going to have to talk about in the future, because I got the figures yesterday, and I can't say that I'm too happy about that. But we'll talk about that. Just going through, I gave you a synopsis of this one, and I've just taken out some of the highlights. The year-to-date sales are 2.5 million for Sapma. The expenses are 1.13. The net profit is 1.389. The debtors are over 1 million, and I'm very concerned about that one, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Cash in the bank is 90,000. Sage account is 7, and we've got 439 in Investec. But the amount of money in debtors is worrying me, because could be a cash flow. The loan account is 3.9, but I think with all the training that's coming in, we'll obviously eliminate that. Not eliminate it, but start decreasing it. As far as the PT is concerned, the sales year to date are 143,000. There again is a lot of outstanding money, because we've done a lot of training down in the Cape, and we haven't been paid for it yet. And there are a number of outstanding talk under debtors. The expenses are 550, so the net loss year to date is 400,000. The debtors control is 278, and there is quite a lot of money due on that one. And the cash in the bank is 130,000, and Sage Pay 13. So the loan account obviously is the same. The income of the Sapma Golf Day was just under 20,000, which is what the norm is. I've written concerns there from a point of view that the high level of outstanding debtors is going to have an effect on our cash flow. And the thing that worries me is that there are a number of very large companies that are involved in this one. And, you know, we're talking about the likes of Medal and a couple of them. And what I've suggested, Tara and I have had a chat about it this morning. I'm asking Tara to send out a new statement to both the contact that we have within the company and the chief executive of the company, and we'll see what the reaction is of that one. I would say that about 30% of that 1 million is large companies, which we will overcome. And then there's a myriad of little ones, which we know take a little bit of time. Once we see the response from Tara's letter, I will start phoning them personally. I did send you a copy of the accounts, Aggie. Is there anything you would like to highlight?
Nothing, Derek, not at this stage. I'll be very honest with you. I only got them this morning. I only printed them out this morning. I had a few issues yesterday. I didn't have much time to look at them, but I'll come back to you on this. I looked
through them, as I say. I don't think there's anything glaring apart from the fact that the sales are down in Sapiti, but as I mentioned to you, Tara and Michael have done a tremendous job in increasing the potential and gone out and actually got quite a lot of business. And I think we're going to be doing reasonably well as far as the last 5 or 6 or 7 months are concerned. I think that will also, the debtors control, I'm not too worried about that one because the majority of that is from 2 companies, which I know are safe, and we'll get that one in. But I think we will obviously make quite big inroads into the training budget this year thereafter. Stage 1, E2 Solutions have confirmed that we could go ahead with raising invoices in the usual way. There was a little bit of confusion as far as whether people would be paying on stage 1 or whether directly into Sapiti, and it has caused a little bit of fascination. That's why we're quoting both bank accounts, but we'll sort that one out. Going through it to reason, I did note that I forgot something as far as the technical meeting was concerned. There were 2 dates there that I mentioned, the next meetings, which were in on the 13th of August and the 19th of September. Those weeks we have executive meetings as well, and I will be up for that week, but the full week to do those meetings as well. But those should be remembered, and we've got them now recorded. And the dates to diarise as far as this committee is concerned is the 13th of August, the technical committee, the 15th of August, the executive committee, the 19th of November, the technical committee, and the 21st of November, the executive committee. We have, Aggie, we had a look at the guy that you had recommended as far as a phone for Michael was concerned. And Tara decided that she had a phone that was lying at home, not doing anything. So what we've done is we've given that to him, and we're just doing a pay-as-you-go situation as far as his data that's concerned. So thank you, Tara, to making that available. That's as far as the agenda is concerned, gentlemen. Unless there's any other issues pertaining to that, can we go on to general?
I think,
Maggie?
Yeah, no, we can go on to general, Derek. I've got nothing to say. Can I raise something in general?
Yes, please.
I'd just like to point out, we've got a labour relations guy that comes and does our inquiries, and this is obviously for others' years. And but I raised this issue with as far as the what's it called again? The labour. The council, the bargaining council. And what he said to me is, the problem that can happen here is that guys don't attend the meetings, and then wages are decided at this meeting, and it would apply to everyone. What I've heard is some of the larger companies are paying much more the wages are much higher for per individual employee compared to the smaller companies. And that is as a result of the negotiations that they had with the bargaining council. Now, how does it apply to the smaller companies that are paying lower wages? How would we be able to negotiate a group of people paying lower wages once we go on to this bargaining council?
Derek, can I come in here?
Yes, please, Ava.
So, Aggie, what we proposed at the AGM was this, that whereas at the moment there are only 17 companies, and they're the large companies, which are members of the Surface Coating Association and therefore party to the bargaining council. And it's those 17 companies that are agreeing to the wage rates, the grades, and then the increases every year. What we proposed is that it was in the best interest of Sapma that all Sapma members automatically, by being a member of Sapma, would automatically be a member of the Surface Coating Association, so that we're able to say to the bargaining council, when we sit down and we negotiate, we want to negotiate a variated range of salaries and wages, depending on company size, depending on number of employees, and depending on the nature of work done within those groupings of companies. So that the problem you point out is a problem that wouldn't then occur, which is that the large companies, simply looking at their averages, are imposing those averages on all of the companies in the sector, small, medium, and large, and survivalist, which is absolutely unfair. So that's the first thing. That the recommendation that Sapma has made at the AGM is that we make membership of the Surface Coating Association for all Sapma members, small, medium, and large, so that we're able to say to the bargaining council that we need to ensure that there is a variated wage and salary and benefit scale in place, so that not all companies are regarded as large. That's the first thing. Then, very, very importantly, there needs to be an exemption process in place, so that the small companies that just cannot afford to increase wages to that average level that the large companies have set are entitled and have the ability and the place, the forum, to apply for exemption from having to pay at those rates and at those levels and those scales. And that's increases, it's bonuses, it's commissions, it's everything that will affect that total cost to the employer at the end of the day. That needs to be negotiated.
And conditions of employment, I should imagine.
Sorry?
And conditions of employment as far as maternity leave, paternity leave, that sort of thing.
Very much so, because what's happening now...
I understand. That's what I understood what Ivor was saying. And the only problem was this guy was coming along and saying that it's actually a dangerous course that we shouldn't take. I disagree with him. I agree with what Ivor's saying. If we can have different levels of employment and different levels of size of companies and the wages that they pay, it also depends on what area you're in. For example, we here near the township, so the guys are prepared to come in at a lower wage with us than what they would for a company like Plascon. I'm just using their name. And, that's what I'm saying. And I agree with what Ivor says. But this guy's sort of thrown the spanner in the works here. And I understand what you're saying. And I think if we run this thing properly, it will benefit all companies belonging to Sapma.
Sorry, yes, sir.
Can I just view my perspective here and with respect to all respect to you, Aggie, but I mean, surely the market's the same. We're trading in the same market, big or small. We should be in the same playing field. We've been affiliated, or we've been part of the bargaining council for some time now, and it seriously has cost our business a lot of money, and all the other things that go with it. So I just think it's unfair to say that it should be differentiated or categorized by smaller players to larger players. We all got the same output to tend to.
Yes, I agree with that. But if we do increase our wages to the same extent that Plascon's paying, for as an example, you'll find a lot of smaller companies be out of business overnight.
Guys, the way it would normally happen is it happens on averages. So if you're going to go to the bargaining council and say we have 100 companies which are small, in other words, they do a turnover of less than 10 million a year. We have 50 companies which are medium, which means they do a turnover between 10 and 50. And then we have 50 companies that are large, for argument's sake. Here are the actual current averages per job category. Then what we require to do from a research point of view is, number one, to ensure that there is a mapping of jobs across those three bands of size companies. And then we're able to do a mapping of salaries, salary bands, ranges of salaries, 100 Rand to 1,000 Rand, for example, for a particular job category, across those three bands. We have averages. Now, the intention is not to change anything. The intention is to recognize the averages in each of those bands, and that those averages become the averages that the bargaining council accepts. Now, obviously, the trade unions would have a problem. The trade unions would say what Stephen has said, that we want to see parity. The small and the medium-sized companies should be paying what the large-sized companies are paying. And then it's a matter of negotiation. The problem we've got is we can say, hold on a moment, we don't want to be in there. So we don't want to be in negotiation, so we don't want to be in the bargaining council. But the problem we've got is that when the minister extends the current agreement, where 17 companies in paint have signed that current agreement out of your 200 members of Sapma, that agreement will apply to all 200 companies, with only 17 companies being parties to the bargaining council. So all I'm trying to say is, and Stephen, I hear what you're saying. We're not saying that we want to amend any condition or wage category. We're saying we simply want to know what the averages are before the bargaining council agreement gets extended to cover those 200 companies. And hopefully before that happens, we want to say to the bargaining council, we need these three bands to be recognized so that we can get more and more small and medium-sized businesses involved in the activities of the council without feeling threatened that they're going to be treated as the large companies are, and therefore need the turnover of the large companies to be able to afford that level of increase and condition of employment.
Okay.
I think if I may just add my penny here, I think this has been one of the areas that has restricted membership as far as the Surface Coatings Employers Association was concerned, because the perception was that the smaller companies would not join it by virtue of the fact that they didn't want to pay the high salaries. And I think the only way, I agree with both what Aggie and what Stephen said, because I think we're in two different categories here. And I think the solution that you proposed, Ivan, is a good one, that I think we should actually put on paper and put it out to our members, because I think that is what the fear of the bargaining council is, that we're going to get locked into something that we can't afford. And as you know, I can remember Stephen coming into the bargaining council as far as surface coatings was concerned, and yes, it did cost them. They had to increase their wages quite significantly.
Look, I agree. I'm not arguing with put out here. I'm just saying that the problem is there's a lot of small companies around that cannot afford that those increases, to increase their wages to 10,000 Rand a month or whatever it is, the minimum wage. Now, this is where we got to talk about it. And are we going to put people out of business, or are we going to keep them there and try and get them to work slowly up to an equitable or basic salary, basic wage?
Well, I must admit, in the State of the Nation discussion last night by the President, mention was made of the minimum wage. Ivor, I'm sure you picked it up as well. From the point of view, you're saying that you can make application for not using you've got to substantiate the reasons why you cannot pay the minimum wage, and that is being obviously reviewed by the government. And I think it will be based on the type of criteria that I was talking about.
Derek, what is the statement, if Sapma had to make a statement today that our members pay them basic minimum wage, which is 3,600 Rand a month, what would you say the current stats would be amongst your membership? Would you say that there's a fair smack of your members who don't currently pay that minimum wage? I'll tell you why I'm asking the question. Guys, I'll tell you why I'm asking the question. I'm asking the question because every single payroll system would, for example, Sage, Pastel, etc., every single ACPAC, every single payroll system doesn't allow its clients to load employees into that payroll system where those employees are not being paid the basic minimum wage, because that's what SARS insists on. And the bottom line is one has not seen kickback. One has seen 33,000 cases laid at the 32,000 cases laid at the CCMA about the minimum wage not being paid, but that's by individuals against employers. But as far as the paint sector is concerned, and Derek, this is a question maybe we should be asking your members. Do you guys pay the basic minimum wages? And if not, why? In other words, what is your reasoning?
I didn't know that number. I must say it's certainly nothing that I'm comfortable in actually even hazarding a guess. Stephen, what would you say? 3,000 a month?
3,600 Rand a month.
Yeah.
Well, just the way our position now, our minimum wage is 7,800.
Yeah, we're slightly lower than you. We're about 5,600 Rand a month, a minimum wage. But
Ivor's argument is an exceptionally good one.
So again,
I mean, if I can put out a letter saying, what is the minimum wage within the industry? It's 3,600. We don't particularly want to know what it is, but can you substantiate the fact that you're paying more than that? I think that is a very good bargain.
I think that's fair. That's fair comment. I think we should do that and just find out if there is anyone paying below that. I know out in the retail industry, I'm not talking about our retail industry, but going out to the restaurants and supermarkets and things, because that's my sort of culture where I come from. They don't pay those kind of salaries. They don't pay anything near 5,000 Rand a month.
No, but do they pay 3,600 Rand, Aggie?
I think most of them do, but some of the restaurants don't.
I think it's a very good point, Ivor, that we should pursue. I really think it's something. I'll put something down on paper, and we can discuss.
I think we should do that.
It just gives you extra bargaining power.
Absolutely, and I think it could also do us a lot of good of saying that our industry is paying good wages.
Well, Derek, just to say as well, the general domestic worker now, and I speak under correction, I haven't got the exact number, is about 5,500 Rand minimum wage.
No, I've seen those figures as well.
I mean, if you're going into the paint industry, and okay, when you're starting off minimum wage, that could be a sweeper, but that could also be a learner operator. So 3,500 or 3,800 Rand, I think is generally in the paint industry, we're all paying way more than that.
So, if I can come in, I can say,
I will send out something on that. I think excellent. I must admit, in trying to save the 5,500 on the domestic servants, Alison has decided she's going to do it herself, but it's costing me a lot more.
Guys, let me just come in here and say, first of all, the basic minimum wage of 3,600 Rand applies to domestic workers. So there's no statutory determination above that basic minimum wage. That's the first thing. But the second thing I want to say here is that where you have an opportunity, and Derek, this is where I keep coming back, and I know I keep sounding like a stuck record, but I think that there are opportunities to bring Sapiti-based programs to your members, where, for example, a management development program, which is what every single company needs to achieve their management control level on triple BEE. But a management internship program or development program, you only have to pay 3,600 Rand a month as a stipend. If it's a learnership, you only have to pay 2,500 Rand a month as a stipend. And the point I'm trying to make is that both of those are ways of managing your salary base. So, for example, Stephen, you might have a situation where you bring in 50 new people every year into your business. I'm just saying, 50 people. Now, if that's the case,
Yes.
and you say, hold on a moment, we're going to commit to 20% of those 50 new people every single year being on a learnership program or a management induction program or a management internship program. So that suddenly becomes 10 of those 50 people where we're only having to pay a minimum wage of 2,500 Rand to if it's on a learnership, or 3,600 Rand a month to if it's on a management internship. It has a significant impact on your salary bill at the end of the year. And more importantly, it's all recognized and required for triple BE purposes. And Derek, all I'm saying to you is a Sapma or a Sapiti coordinated program could save your members millions, because I'm seeing this with my clients all the time.
However, the only reason that it's not working is people do not understand it and they do not know about it. But I'm prepared to have another go. I think it's an excellent idea. I think a lot of those ideas as far as the BBE, people are prepared to look at the bad side of BBE, but not some of the good side from a point of view of how you can actually save money.
Yeah. Well, you know what I just want to say as well is, and I don't know if we're seen as a medium or a big player in the market, but just generally, other than the bargaining council, just on health and safety and the changes that we're having to make in our business to become, let's just say, a first world manufacturer in a third world country is costing our business a lot, and that's just making our trading arena so much more difficult. And just going back to what you were saying earlier, Ivor, is to have small, medium businesses categorized, and that the smaller businesses can't afford certain wages or certain costs. Well, then what I might think of doing is actually creating 5 small manufacturing concerns and supply one business. You know, they're not just going to that wage bill arena, and it just makes it much more affordable. But I can tell you, as we stand now, it is very, very difficult to actually keep our costs reasonable to actually just be sustainable in this market and climate in this point in time.
Stephen, I'm going to say something, and I know I'm going to anger people like Aggie, etc., the professionals out there, but I'm going to say it this way. Mm-hmm. Bookkeepers and accountants do not have sufficient insight into the legislative framework around things like triple BE on the one hand, bargaining councils and the Labour Relations Act on the other hand, to know where there is potential to cut costs. And all I'm trying to say is that you can't expect bookkeepers and accountants to have that insight. Their insight is around the tax codes. But even as far as the tax codes are concerned, the opportunity to save money on 12H. Let me just come back to that 10 out of the 50 of your new employees, for example. Do you know, for example, that if you did 10 learnerships in your business, that is 800,000 Rand a year tax deduction over and above any other deductions you've required to actually bring them into the workplace. 800,000 Rand a year you can be reducing your taxable bill by every single year. Now, if we are collectively doing 100 in a company, that's 80,000 Rand per individual for 100 a year. I'll give you a practical example. Adcore do 144 million Rand a year tax deductions. They reduce their tax bill by 144 million Rand a year just doing learnerships. And all I'm trying to say is bookkeepers and accountants do not play in that area.
Yeah.
Sorry, Aggie. Personal company excluded.
Exciting.
I'll take this very personally. I think I was just targeting me and my poor keepers here. I'm going to go down and have a couple of shots of scotch.
You jumped in too quickly, Ivor. I mean, Aggie, I was about to say Aggie told me this last week.
So Derek,
I think that's terribly exciting. We've got to come up with a way of actually like that, Ivor. The point is that they do not understand what the requirements are and what the benefits are.
I want to just illustrate one other thing, and we're going to run out of time. But Stephen, how many employees do you have under the age of 29, would you say, in your current workforce? Under the age of 29. Just give me a thumbs up.
I'm going to guess 150.
Okay, 150. Now imagine if I say to you, you could be saving 1.5 million Rand a month off of your current salary bill, just by understanding how ETI works as far as those 150 employees are concerned. 1.5 million Rand a year. because it's been there for 5 years. It's just been extended for another 10 years to be able to use ETI for that purpose. So all I'm trying to say is there are saving upon saving upon saving if you just understand the framework around the Tax Act and not just the Tax Act itself.
You know, I just want to share something with you guys. I went to the last Sage VIP, what do they call it, seminar, and they asked the people to put up their hands. There were about close to 500 people there, and they said, please put up your hands, those who are claiming ETI. And there was about 10 people in the whole section, the whole hall.
Frightening.
So if we had a Sapma drive for saving on your bottom line, and we said to companies, come to a workshop where we will go through everything, whether it's disability, whether it's ETI, whether it's any of the stuff that's in place, we'll give you a full exposure to how you can save money by just looking at skilling and triple BE, et cetera, in your business. And we got our members agitated and activated around saving money. Surely they'd be interested, Derek.
I think at a time like this, they could. Aggie, I must ask you a question. The seminar you went to, what were the professions of the people that were in the hall?
Well, they were all payroll people.
Accountants and bookkeepers.
Not necessarily. They were people who do payrolls. And of large companies, we're not talking about Warrior Paints or one of those companies. We're talking about big companies.
I'm only joking. I think it's an absolute wonderful opportunity, and I think with the economic conditions at the moment, I think it's a must. It's got to be something. But Stephen, I really hope that you take this up with Ivor. We'll get some details on that, because that would be a case study that would be unbelievable, and I think it would bring it to the people's attention.
Yeah. No. Well, thank you, and I'm glad that I've seen that. Definitely, will communicate with you, Ivor.
Sure. Right, Derek.
The biggest problem is that the people like myself, we old people, okay, and our directors are all old people. So we look at things the way they were in the 1970s and 1980s, and we believe that's the way we should be working. And unfortunately, life has changed. Things have changed in this country, and we've got to look at those factors.
All right.
Unfortunately, we don't have an age problem as far as Sapma is concerned. I appreciate the problem. I think I think you're right. I think it's something that people get into a fixed sort of a mode that they operate under, and I don't believe that people are keeping up to date. We've got very fortunate in having somebody like Ivor that keeps up to date with all of these issues on the Gazette, and that is something that is not being done within the paint industry. And I think it's a role that obviously Sapma should fulfill.
From Primac's perspective, I mean, what we're trying to do is we're trying to drive our business to be a first world manufacturing company. So if there's areas where we can actually obviously have tax incentives or areas where we can save money, we definitely will look at that.
Well, I see Taurus just sent a little message saying, well done, Ivor. And I really do. I think it's an exceptionally good idea. Right, gentlemen, I know that we obviously you're all pressed for time. Anything else under general?
No, that's all I've got. Stephen?
All right, I mean, if I may just ask, and I must say thank you for setting this up as far as the GoToMeeting is concerned.
Yeah.
What is your perspective and feeling about it, guys?
I think it's a great platform, and I think I'm on my mobile, so yeah, I think it's actually great. You can be anywhere, and you can log into the meeting. The only thing you got to do if you're on your mobile is switch off your WhatsApps and incoming call.
I saw all of those pictures on your WhatsApp, Stephen.
I've seen them. I got you enjoying them.
I have found it exceptionally good, and I think it's something that we will use more and more. And obviously, Ivor, thank you very much. I think we've got to. But I think that we must set ourselves up. I'd like to know a hell of a lot more about it so that I can put up presentations, etc. but I think it's an exceptional mode of communication. If I may say, from Chile, South Brim, have a good weekend and enjoy your shooting, Stephen.
Thank you.
I hope the biltong is forthcoming. It's good time of the year to making biltong. And you have a good year. And Ivor, thank you so much for participating.
Thanks, guys.
The way you have. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ivor. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, cheers.